Stalingrad, a quiet giant on the Volga, unaware that history was already sharpening its blade. Until one summer, when the sky began to change, as if the horizon itself sensed the storm marching toward it. At first, there was only silence. A silence so heavy it felt like the city was holding its breath. Then, a shadow crept across the fields. Not clouds, not birds, something far more ominous. Every eye turned upward, searching the sky, and finding an answer they were never meant to face. Bombay doors opened like iron jaws. And in the stillness before the first blast, time itself seemed to hesitate. And in that heartbeat of darkness, everything changed. Stalingrad's story didn't begin with soldiers or speeches. It began with fire, and with a city that refused to die. Before the fire, Stalingrad was alive, a city of nearly 500,000 people. Workers poured into factories along the Volga. Whistles echoed at dawn, and steel from these mills fueled an entire nation. Nobody imagined that within months, these same streets would become trenches. Stalingrad was more than factories. It was a symbol, a city named after the Soviet leader himself. Losing it would be unthinkable. Holding it would be a matter of pride, of morale, of identity. Stalin knew this, and so did Hitler. The German advance was unstoppable. From the Don to the Volga, their armor crushed everything in its path. Villages vanished under tank treads. Columns of refugees stretched for miles. The lightning war that had devoured Europe was now devouring Russia. Yet the closer the Germans pushed toward the Volga, the more the Soviets refused to break. Reinforcements poured in. Civilians dug trenches beside soldiers. What awaited the invaders was no ordinary resistance, but a city preparing to become a fortress. And then came the order that sealed the fate of millions. Order number 227. Not one step back. Every factory became a fortress. Every worker became a fighter. Every street would be a battlefield. But none knew how quickly the storm would descend. As the German Sixth Army reached the outskirts, artillery began to fall. Shells screamed into the suburbs. Fire and dust swallowed entire neighborhoods in minutes. The battle had come to Stalingrad's door. The storm had broken. The city was burning. And a name neither leader could afford to lose was about to become the deadliest battleground the world had ever seen. When the Germans finally reached the city's edge, they expected another quick victory. Instead, they found something else entirely, a city already half destroyed, yet more determined than ever to live. Soviet command sent General Vasily Chukov to hold the line, a man who believed Stalingrad could only be defended by fighting the Germans, not by miles, but by meters. German artillery pounded the city endlessly. Buildings collapsed like sand. Streets vanished under smoke. Yet through this firestorm, Soviet reinforcements crossed the Volga, sometimes under machine gun fire so heavy it turned the river white with splashes. Once inside the city, there were no front lines left. Every ruined building was a fortress, every basement a bunker, every factory a battlefield. Stalingrad had become a maze of shattered concrete and death. The grain elevator became the city's first great stand. A massive concrete tower overlooking the rail yards defended by fewer than 100. Soviets who fought tooth and claw against an entire battalion of Germans. German commanders described the defenders as fanatics, but they were workers, farmers, students, Ordinary men who realized the truth. If the Germans took the elevator, they would take the city. The fighting was brutal. Grenades rolled down stairwells. Flamethrowers swept through hallways. Men fought in total darkness, guided only by sound, footsteps, breaths, the clinking of a rifle bolt. When the elevator finally fell, it had taken days far longer than the Germans ever imagined. They were shocked. If one building cost this much, what would the rest of the city take? Stalingrad had sent its message. If Germany wanted the city, they would have to bleed for every street, every hallway, every single brick. The true battle for Stalingrad had only just begun. Stalingrad soon became a nightmare without daylight. There were no front lines, only ruins, filled with shadows, ambushes, and sudden death. The Soviets fought from basements, sewers, and shattered stairways. The Germans called it Reimagination, the Rat War.
Move slowly.
Battles erupted, room by room, floor by floor. Grenades bounced down hallways. Rifles fired through holes, smashed into walls. Men fought so close they could hear each other breathing through the dust. Fighting in Stalingrad meant hunting in silence. Snipers perched in broken windows, factory towers, even chimney stacks. Every alleyway could hide death. Every pile of rubble could hide a Soviet marksman waiting for a single perfect shot. The factories, Red October, barricaded, the tractor plant became fortresses of steel. Workers who once forged machines now forged barricades, turning every assembly hall into a kill zone. In these metal labyrinths, battles changed every hour. Germans took a building by morning, lost it by midday, and fought for the same room again by nightfall. Control of the city shifted not by streets, but by staircases. The Soviets learned to fight close, so close that German tanks could not fire without hitting their own men. This hugging tactic forced the two armies into brutal hand-to-hand combat across the ruins. By autumn, Stalingrad had become a world made of ruins, a place where time vanished, where death lurked in every shadow, and where neither side could tell if they were advancing, or simply surviving. The Rat War had consumed the city. By November, the Germans believed victory was close. Paulus reported that Stalingrad was nearly taken. But outside the city, the Red Army was gathering strength, quietly, patiently, invisibly beyond the snow. Operation Uranus, a massive counterattack, did not target the German elite. It struck where the Axis was weakest, the overstretched Romanian armies guarding the flanks, and when the hammer fell, the line shattered instantly. Soviet armor punched through the frozen steppe like a tidal wave of steel. T-34s tore into the flanks, crushing trenches, scattering infantry, and rolling straight toward the German rear. Within hours, the front collapsed. Thousands fled in desperation. Reports came in of entire divisions simply no longer existing. The Soviets were no longer defending Stalingrad, they were hunting for the encirclement. To the south, another Soviet army broke through. Two giant pincers, north and south, raced across the steppe, closing in on one point, the Kalabakh. If they met, the Sixth Army would be trapped. And then, the trap snapped shut. At a small town called Kalak, Soviet spearheads from the north and south finally met, shaking hands amid the ruins. The German Sixth Army was trapped. Inside the city, German soldiers looked to the west for relief, but saw only flames and snow. The supply lines were gone. The path home erased. For the first time in the war, the German Sixth Army, once unstoppable, was the one trapped. Nearly 300,000 men were cut off from the world, encircled in a frozen wasteland of fire, starvation, and death. Operation Uranus had succeeded. The hunters had become the hunted. Winter fell over Stalingrad like a hammer. Temperatures plunged below 30 degrees Celsius. Snow buried the ruins. And inside the encirclement, nearly 300,000 German soldiers realized the truth. No supplies were coming. No rescue was coming. Only death. The Luftwaffe promised to resupply the 6th Army, but the winter sky belonged to the Soviets. Planes were shot down, driven back, or lost in blinding storms. Barely a fraction of the required supplies ever arrived. Food vanished first, then ammunition, then hope. Men boiled belts for leather soup. Frostbite claimed fingers and feet. Diseases spread through frozen trenches where bodies lay untouched for days. Paulus, the commander of the 6th Army, begged Hitler for permission to break out. But the order never changed. Stand fast. Stalingrad was to be held at all costs, even if the cost was the army itself. Meanwhile, the Soviets tightened the noose. Artillery pounded the pocket day and night. Every attempt to move, every attempt to breathe, was met with fire. Entire divisions simply vanished. Not in glorious charges, but in silence, swallowed by cold, hunger, and ceaseless bombardment. The 6th Army was being erased one frostbitten night at a time. Inside Stalingrad, the survivors clung to ruined basements, sharing the last matches, the last bullets, the last hope. They were not fighting for victory anymore. They were fighting to stay alive one more hour. Hitler expected them to fight to the last man. Paulus expected them to die. But the truth was simpler. The 6th Army no longer had the strength to fight or flee. They were prisoners of the winter itself. By January 1943, the 6th Army was no longer an army. It was a scattered mass of frozen, starving men trapped in cellars, trenches, and shattered factories that offered no warmth and no hope. The Soviets closed in from every side. Buildings that once took days to capture now fell in minutes. The final pockets of resistance shrank into snowy courtyards and broken streets. Nowhere left to retreat, nowhere to hide. In the end, there was nothing left to fight for. No food, no shelter, no orders that could change fate. Stalingrad had become a frozen grave, and its final act would be surrender. In the frozen headquarters beneath the Univermag, the last spark of German command flickered out. Radios spat only static. Maps no longer mattered. This was no longer an army, only a staff waiting for the inevitable. Inside the ruined department store, General Paulus received Hitler's final order, fight to the last bullet. But Paulus knew the truth. There were no bullets left. On January 31st, he surrendered the southern pocket. The first field marshal in German history to capitulate, promoted the night before because Hitler expected him to die instead.
As ordered, the fighting has...
2 days later, the northern pocket fell. The last German troops, trapped among the burning ruins of the tractor plant, laid down their rifles. The Battle of Stalingrad was over. Nearly 91,000 Germans marched into captivity. Only a fraction would ever return. The rest remained in the snow and ruins of a city they were never meant to take. For the Soviets, Stalingrad was more than a victory. It was survival. Proof the Red Army could stand against and break the might of Nazi Germany. From this moment on, the war would never again march east. Stalingrad shattered the myth of German invincibility. From these frozen ruins began a momentum that would carry all the way to Berlin. It was not just a battle, but a graveyard for empires. a warning written in fire and ice. A reminder that even in the darkest winter, history is shaped by those who refuse to fall. Its echo lived on in shattered families, scarred landscapes, and in the memory of a world that saw the depths humanity could sink and its power to endure. Stalingrad reshaped the war, reshaped nations, reshaped every soul it touched. And as snow fell over a rebuilt city, one truth remained. Victory is not only born from strength, but from the refusal to break. If you want more forgotten battles, lost empires, and cinematic histories brought back to life, join us. Like, subscribe, and step once more into the past. The next story awaits. This is What If, where the past meets possibility.